just really quickly, those of you who know me, and I've lived here my entire life, know that I'm a slow learner, but even I figured out after 5 years that if you don't have control of the White House and the executive branch, that you're not going to fundamentally change the country. The White House, the executive branch, controls our foreign policy, it controls cabinet-level appointments, it controls appointments to the Supreme Court. We won 1 out of the last 6 popular votes for president. 1 out of 6. So we got to figure out how to win, and this is a participatory democracy, so you got to figure out what issues are important to you and who you're going to support. I can tell you from my standpoint, as I have gotten to know Senator Rubio for the last 5 years, I haven't seen anybody that does a better job of communicating principled conservatism in a hopeful way. And what we have to start doing, you got to tell people not only what you believe, but you got to tell them why you believe it. And you have to tell them in a way that makes them think that you understand the circumstances of their life. And I'm not talking about compromising what you believe. I'm talking about persuading people and doing so in hopeful terms. So he's one of my favorite people in all of politics. He and Tim Scott do the very best job of communicating principled conservatism in a hopeful way of anybody in our line of work. So welcome back to Spartanburg, Senator Marco Rubio. Let
me put my phone away in case it starts buzzing. I always get a little email from my wife. You just came out on the news and your phone is in your front pocket. I can actually take it in now in my front pocket. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful. Thank you for coming here today. We have some questions that I think we've lined up, and I'm really excited about answering. So I wanted just to speak to you for a few minutes to kind of set the tone for this election, this campaign, and why I'm here today. Let me walk this way. I'm here today, obviously, to earn your support in this important election. Now, every election is important, right? Every 4 years they come and say, this is the most important election in our lifetime. They all are important. This election is unique because most elections are a choice between political parties. You want a Democrat, you want a Republican, you want a conservative, or you want a liberal. This is not just a choice between ideologies or political parties. I want to make the argument to you today that this election is a generational choice about our identity as a nation and as a people. That what we are deciding in this election is the essence of America and what kind of country we want to be in the 21st century. In the 20th century and the 19th century, the Americans that came before us did what they needed to do. And America was the single greatest nation in the history of mankind. This is not something I read about in a book or saw in a magazine or a documentary. Like you, I have lived the American experience. And I understand how unique this country is. But being a special country was never automatic. Each generation before us had to do certain things to make America special and keep America special. And now the time has come for this generation to make that choice. And that's why what's at stake is the very essence of our nation in the 21st century. And it's a troubling time because there are 3 trends in American politics that are really disturbing people. The first is a growing number of Americans feel like outsiders in their own country, out of place in their own nation. They feel that way for a couple reasons. First of all, we're people that we celebrate financial success. That this is a country where if you work hard and you persevere, you can get ahead in life. I remember growing up as a child, we lived in Las Vegas. And there wasn't a lot of things for kids to do, so my parents used to drive us through the nice neighborhood to see the nice houses of the people who had been successful. One of the houses was Liberace's, the piano guy. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. My parents had a choice. They could teach us, the way some believe, that these people are making all that money and that's why we are struggling. But they taught me the opposite. They taught me that I could have, if that's what I wanted, I could do it too. That it didn't matter that he was a bartender and she was a maid. If what I wanted out of life was financial success, I lived in the one place on earth where that was possible. But today we have a president, and many on the political left, that look down on success. They basically imply that if you're financially successful, you must be doing something wrong, or that you're being greedy. That will change when I'm president. I will have a president that celebrates not just financial success in terms of wealth, but financial success in terms of happiness. I will be a president committed to the idea that we want to remain a country where we can make poor people richer without having to make rich people poor. We are not going to engage in class warfare. The second thing that leaves people feeling like outsiders is if you hold traditional values, oftentimes you're described as a bigot or a hater. Now, we've always been a tolerant people, and this is a free nation. People have a right to believe whatever they want. But that also includes the opportunity to exercise your values, to teach them in your home, and to live them in your life. We've always been a nation that's told people strong families is good. Marriages are important for children and for their future. Hard work, discipline, self-control, these things matter. And the community around us that reinforces these beliefs are important. Today, in the larger culture, we are increasingly, when you talk about these things, you are defined as someone who's judgmental or hateful or a bigot. Nothing can be further from the truth. When I'm President of the United States, we're going to have a president that doesn't just tell you not to overeat because it causes diabetes. We're going to have a president that tells you be good parents, have strong families, because you can't have a strong country without strong families and strong communities backed up by a strong faith. The third thing is we've always been told that we're a special country. I was taught that from the very earliest days of my life. There was never a moment in my life where my family did not believe or did not instill in me how blessed and fortunate I was to be a citizen of the greatest nation in the history of all mankind. But now we have political leaders. We got a guy running in the Democratic Party that says we should be more like Norway. I have nothing against Norway, nothing. If you want to be like Norway, move to Norway. I want to be America. And we need a president again that believes that America is unique and special, that doesn't apologize for America, that doesn't go around the world asking people forgiveness for America. We are not a perfect country, but we are the best country in the history of all mankind, and we need a president that believes that. The second thing that's happening in our society today is we have a government that is completely out of touch. We have a record number of people trapped in poverty. Record numbers of people trapped in poverty. Wages are flat. Everything costs more and new things to pay for, but wages are flat. And we have a political leadership, quite frankly, in both political parties that are constantly trying to figure out what government program can we come up with to turn this around. It isn't government programs that are going to turn this around. It is the private sector that is going to turn it around. And when I'm president, we will have a president that makes America the single best place in the world for the private sector to succeed. We will have policies that make America the easiest and the best place in the world to start a business or to grow an existing business. That's why we'll reform our tax code. That's why we'll deal with the regulations. That's why we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's why we're going to fully utilize our energy resources. Because presidents don't grow the economy. The federal government doesn't grow the economy. The economy is grown by people like you and the people that own this establishment, who have access to money, whether they borrowed it, they maxed out their credit card, or someone lent it to them or invested it with them. And they risked that money to start a business or expand an existing one. You want to turn this economy around? Let's make America the best place in the world for people to do that again. Because today we're not. We have a government that's out of touch because we are drowning young Americans in debt. There was a poll last week. It found that over 50% of millennials, young Americans, believe the American dream is dead. Of course they do. Of course they believe the American dream is dead. We're leaving them with a $19 to $20 trillion debt. No generation has ever done that to the next. Many of them owe thousands of dollars in student loans that they borrowed for a degree that didn't even lead to a job. When I'm the President of the United States, we are going to remove the anchor of this debt from the neck of our young Americans. We are going to balance our budgets. We're going to bring our debt under control. We know how to do that. We know how to bring our debt under control. And we are going to create alternatives to student loans so people don't have to continue to borrow money the way they are now. One of the ways you can avoid student loans, by the way, is to have more vocational training in America. We have a bunch of political leaders in this country that for 20 years tell everybody everyone has to go to a 4-year college. Of course they want you to do that, because that means you get 4 years of indoctrination from a liberal professor somewhere in America. But I can tell you how you can find a job that pays you $50,000 a year at 18 years of age. Be a welder, be a plumber, be an airplane mechanic, be a car technician, be a machinist. Anyone who tells you these aren't valuable jobs is a liar. These are good jobs. These are better. Some of these jobs pay a lot more than the college jobs pay for. And we stop teaching people to do it. As president, I will be the vocational education president. We will help young people deal with this and avoid these loans in the process. And the last thing that really makes our government out of touch is look at the world around us. This is not a safe world. This is an increasingly dangerous world. An increasingly dangerous world. You have a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. The Chinese are rapidly expanding their military. The Russians are sowing instability in Europe. Iran is getting $150 billion, which they're going to use to build a nuclear weapon. And radical jihadists attack us here at home and around the world. And what is this out-of-touch government doing? And both parties have contributed to this. You know what they're doing? They are slashing our military by $1 trillion over the next 10 years. So the world is growing more dangerous, and we are on pace to soon have the oldest and the smallest Navy we have ever had. I'm sorry, the oldest and the smallest Air Force we have ever had. The oldest and the smallest Navy we have had since 1915. And the smallest Army we have had since the beginning of the Second World War. How can it be that the world is more dangerous and we are growing weaker? And yet that is the direction that we are being taken, in many respects by both political parties. But it almost feels like those on the left and this president is saying, America's already too involved. We need to be cut down to size, so let's reduce our military so we won't be able to do more because we won't have the capability to do more. That will change when I'm president. When I'm president of this country, when I'm President of the United States, we will rebuild the U.S. military. It will remain the strongest and most powerful military force in the history of the world, capable of confronting and defeating any challenge now or in the future. That is the #1 priority of our federal government, and that is what I will do every single day as Commander-in-Chief of this great land. My final point. You take these two things into account, a people that feel out of place, a government that's out of touch. And you know the image this is creating around the world? That America's a nation in decline. That's what China tells every nation in Asia. America's in decline. It's old. It's stale. It's falling back. In Europe, their perception is America is in decline. Our enemies brag about it. They mock us. They mock this president. Our enemies believe we are a nation in decline. These radical ISIS people put out videos talking about how they're going to fly the black flag of ISIS over the White House and in our communities. And our allies are all planning already for a post-American world. Our next president needs to make it very clear, America is not in decline. America remains a great country. We just have a bad and weak president. And that will change when I'm elected. When I'm elected, it will be clear to the world that America is a nation on the rise. That we remain the strongest and most powerful country in the world. And we won't just have a president that believes America is the greatest country in the world. If you vote for me and I'm elected president, you will have a president that acts like America is the greatest country in the world again. So this is the choice before us. It's sad for me to report to you that the direction we are on right now will leave us as the first generation in American history that leaves our kids worse off than ourselves. That's what we're doing right now. We would be the first Americans ever, if we don't do anything, if we just keep doing what we are doing now, weakening our military, weakening our economy, weakening our prestige in the world, stop teaching our kids about how special America is, we keep doing that for much longer, and we are going to be the first Americans ever that leave the next generation worse off. But I'm running for president because we have another choice before us. It doesn't have to remain this way. We can change direction. And if we do what needs to be done, we can leave our children as the freest and most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. That is the choice before us in this election. And look, what we're being asked to do is not different from what the Americans before us were asked to do. I want you to understand this nation's never had it easy. For people that make it sound like America had it easy for all these years and now we face these incredible struggles, that's not an accurate reading of our history. We were founded by declaring independence from the most powerful empire in the world. Then we had a civil war that almost ended the country. Then we had a great world war that killed millions of people around the world. Then we had a Great Depression. Then we had a Second World War that was even worse than the First World War. Then we had a long and dangerous Cold War. The 60s divided us over civil rights in Vietnam. The 70s saw the resignation of a president in scandal, long gas lines, hostages in Iran. When did we ever have it easy? When did America ever have it easy? We have never had it easy. Because what we have is special. It is different. And anything that is special and different is hard. But it's worth fighting for. It's worth keeping. It's worth expanding. And that's what we have a chance to do. I will close by saying that the reason why I believe America is special is because this is not just the nation I was born in. This is the nation that literally changed the history of my family. As many of you know by now, my parents were not born in the United States. They were born on the island of Cuba into a society like most of the societies that have ever existed. A society that said to them, look, your parents aren't rich, your parents aren't connected. It really won't matter how hard you work or how long you try. There are only certain things you're allowed to be and do. So they came here. Because it was the one place on earth where we don't care where you started out. Your parents don't have to be rich or famous. You are going to get judged based on your talent and your work ethic. That is unique. We are blessed. We should all thank God that we are not just Americans, but 21st century Americans. That we live in the freest and the most prosperous society that mankind has ever known. That we live in a place where you come from doesn't decide where you get to go. But that's not automatic. We have to keep it that way. We have to confront challenges and embrace opportunities for it to be that way for more people than ever before. The very purpose of my parents' life in America was to give us a better life. They were never rich or famous people, but they were successful. Because by hard work and sacrifice, they were able to open doors for us that had closed for them. And now, whether we remain a special country or not will ultimately be determined by whether that's still possible. If we keep doing what we are doing now, we're going to become one of those countries where people get stuck. We're going to become one of those countries where no matter how hard you work, only people that have access to power and privilege are going to be able to get ahead. That's what big government leads to. That's who we've never been that kind of country. And we shouldn't start now. We are called upon not just to save the American dream, but to expand it, to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And as tough as things may seem today, I hope you believe that if we make the right choice in this election, not only will we turn this country around, we will make it greater than it's ever been. And the 21st century that lies ahead won't just be as good as the 20th century. It will be a new American century. So I hope that I can earn your support. Thank you for being here, and God bless you. Thank you.
Senator, the people...
I don't know, is that on?
Senator? There's probably an on-off switch.
It's the Chinese hackers. The Chinese hackers are always hacking my campaign events, so that'll work.
I'm a history major, so I can't find the on-off switch. I would just tell you this, the same Senator Rubio you just saw on stage is the same Senator Rubio that you would hear if you were sitting at a table for two at a restaurant. So if you like authenticity and sincerity...
That's why no one goes to dinner with me, because they're like, can we talk about sports? No.
All right, I get to do my favorite thing in the world, which is ask questions. Do you swear to tell the truth, won't you? Nicole, as a 30-year-old, is very concerned that Social Security will not be around when she is eligible for it.
Absolutely. If we do nothing, that's what's going to happen. We've never done this to any generation of Americans. When in our 200-year history has the people in charge decided, you know what, we're going to live it up and let the future worry about the future? When have we ever done that as a country until now? Talk about reckless and out of touch. Yes, Social Security and Medicare are going bankrupt. And anyone who tells you that we shouldn't do anything about it is in favor of bankrupting it. Now here's the good news. We can save Social Security and Medicare, and we don't have to change anything for the people that are on it now or that are about to retire. That's really important to me, because my mom is 85 years old. Oh, she doesn't like when I say how old she is. She's on Social Security and Medicare for 20 years now. And this is her primary source of income. She can't afford to go back to work. She can't. So the good news is we can save Social Security and Medicare, and we don't have to change anything for the people that are on it now or are about to retire, like Trey Gowdy. Not really. He's not going to retire. But for people that my age and younger, for example, it's going to look a little different. It'll still be the best thing in the world, but it's going to look a little different. What does that mean? It means that instead of retiring at 67, I'll have to retire at 68. If I were still in the Senate, it would make me one of the youngest people there, okay? It means that if I've made a lot of money and I've been financially successful, my Social Security check from year to year is not going to grow as fast as it grows for someone who made less money. It means that my Medicare could very well be the option of using my Medicare money to buy a private plan that I like better than standard Medicare. We have that kind of now with Medicare Advantage. These are not unreasonable changes. And if we make them, we can bring the debt under control and we can save these programs and we don't have to change anything for the people that are on it now. If we do nothing, in 8 to 10 years, and maybe less, we'll have a debt crisis, and these programs will run out of money. In fact, the Social Security Disability Fund is already bankrupt. We're already going to have to scramble just to save that program because of all the abuses and fraud that's going on within the Disability Fund. Imagine that happening to millions of Americans through Social Security and Medicare. This is absolutely right. We have never seen a generation leave so much debt on the shoulder of their children and grandchildren as this generation of leadership is doing. It's immoral, it's un-American, it's unacceptable, and it will be among my highest priorities as president to correct this wrong.
Sir, I know you had an unusual set of circumstances yesterday. Mary Ann, who's on the front row, wants to know how you would have voted on the omnibus yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that bill is it was packaged. This happens every year. Okay, every year at the end of the year, they put together all these things they need to get done and they pass it. Here's why people are really disenchanted about it. They're disenchanted about it because every week on the news we've been hearing ISIS is trying to use the Syrian refugee crisis to sneak people into the United States. So you would think, all right, well, that's been on the news. Everyone knows that it's true. They're going to do something about it, right? Because everybody wants America to be safe. And the Democrats say, no, we're not doing anything about it. We want to leave it exactly the way it is. And by the way, if you try to change it, you're a bigot. You're a hater. If you somehow want to protect America, you're a bigot or a hater. That's ridiculous. How many people here have a lock on their front door? Do you hate the people outside your house? Why do you have a lock on the front door of your house? Because you love the people on the inside of your house. And then they say, well, we've never done this before. Well, there was a time not long ago where no one locked their doors, right? Now we lock our doors because the world has changed. Now we have to change these programs because the world has changed. 50 years ago when refugees came here fleeing communism, they came here fleeing communism. We weren't worried about them infiltrating 10,000 communists. We knew that these were people seeking freedom and opportunity. This is a very different threat now, and it's one that we have to be 100% right on. We can't get a single person wrong. And there's no way they can promise you that. And you want a best example of it? Look at this lady that killed all those people, this awful terrorist in San Bernardino. Okay? She came here on a fiancé visa, which a lot of people didn't even know there was such a thing as a fiancé visa. The law already says you have to fully vet them. For example, they have to be able to prove that they knew each other before they applied for the visa. They didn't do it. There was a lazy effort to process the visa. One or two people made a mistake in processing the visa. The law already requires us to vet them. So it's not about new requirements, it's the existing requirements. They didn't do it. And this killer got into the United States. There is no one in the FBI, at Homeland Security, and any American agency that can tell you we're going to get all of them right. And why does that matter? Because if you allow 10,000 people in, and 9,999 of them are good people, and one of them is a killer, you made a big mistake. That's the challenge of this issue. It was not dealt with in that. Planned Parenthood still gets their money. Sanctuary cities still get their money. And so this happens every single year, and it's part of that whole out of touch thing that I talked about. People read the news and then they read this is happening and they're like, how can that be? What planet are you guys living on? And that's why you see so much frustration about American politics in the 21st century and why we need to have a new president. It's because a lot of what's in that is because this president said, if it doesn't come out the way I want it, on these issues I just mentioned to you, I won't sign it. And the government will shut down, and I'll blame you guys for it. We need a president that will start signing things that are responsible again, so these votes begin to matter again. We repealed Obamacare 2 weeks ago through reconciliation, this fancy term for the same way they passed it in the first place. He's not going to sign that. That's why this election matters so much. If we do what we need to do in this election, then Congress, if we still have the majority, can vote to repeal Obamacare. I will sign it. Can vote to improve these programs to keep us safe. I will sign it. Can rebuild our military, and I will sign it.
Senator, I have heard you say before that President Obama is not wrong because
Which is the average age, by the way, of a senator. Yeah.
But for those, and we do have a question from Mr. Patel, for those who say, all right, we just took a chance on a first-term senator, how are you different and how will you?
Well, we just took a chance on a first-term liberal senator, and that was the... But look, Barack Obama now has 7 years of presidential experience. 7 years of presidential experience, which is more than anyone except Bill Clinton, George Bush, and George H.W. Bush. There are only 3 people in the world that have more U.S. presidential experience than Barack Obama. He is now 7 years into the presidency. So he's no longer a one-term senator. He's worse today than he was his first day in office. So if you're getting worse, not better, then it clearly is not the experience. Here's why Barack Obama has failed. Because his ideas don't work. There's a reason why people come here from all over the world or try to come here. They don't want to live in a country where the government dominates the economy. He wants an economy that's dominated by the government. There's a reason why people looked up to America around the world, because we had the strongest military. The strongest military in the world is an ally to peace. We are a peaceful people. We don't want war. Who here wants to start a war for the heck of it? No one wants to start a war. And we know that weakness invites violence. Here's a president that's weakening our military. Here's a president whose attitude from his first day in office is all these problems around the world are because America's too powerful, because America's too involved, because we tell people what to do. He goes to Cairo, Egypt, less than a year into office, and gives a speech basically apologizing for America and all the things we've done. He goes around saying every nation thinks they're exceptional. Why do we think we're exceptional? This is why he's failed. His ideas don't work. I don't care if he'd served 50 years in the U.S. Senate or 50 years as a governor. His ideas don't work. They never have, and they never will. And that's why this president is a failure. What it takes to succeed as president? 2 things. Number 1, president doesn't run the economy. If anyone tells you, elect me president, I am going to run the economy, you should turn and run. Okay? Presidents don't run the economy. The private sector runs the economy. Before they open this wonderful place, do you think they picked up the phone and asked the president for permission? No. The private sector runs the economy. The job of those of us in government is to put in place policies that allow us to succeed. Don't have the most expensive business tax rate in the world. Don't have the most burdensome regulations on the planet. Don't create policies that make America worse, not better, and compared to our global competitors. That's what you need from a president. The one thing a president has to do is keep us safe. And how can he keep us safe when ISIS was the JV team, and then the day before Paris, ISIS was contained, and then the Sunday after the attacks, he gives this speech where he basically says, I know that some of you might be scared, maybe you're overreacting, and by the way, I'm not changing anything in our strategy. I wish he hadn't spoken at all, because he made things worse. This is why Barack Obama has failed, not because he only served 2 or 4 years, to whatever number of years in the Senate. His ideas don't work. And his 7 years of experience, he's only gotten worse, not better.
Senator, we had a question from a 30-year-old, and now we'll go to the other end of the spectrum. Alan wants to know what President Rubio would mean for current seniors.
Well, it would mean a number of things. The first is, it would mean that our retirement systems would remain stable. The reality, and I'm from Florida. A lot of people don't know this. This is not well known. There's a lot of seniors in Florida. And one of them is my mother, as I said a little earlier. So I know, for example, my mother cannot afford a disruption in her coverage on Medicare and cannot afford a disruption in her Social Security. But I can't promise you that that won't happen if we don't do something about this. Because we're going to have a debt crisis at some point. These programs were designed when we had 16 people paying in for every person getting their benefit that they earned through years of hard work. Now it's down to 3 people paying in for every person, and it'll soon be 2 people. That's the math. That's the reality. So it will be among my highest priorities to make sure that for people that are on it now or people that are about to retire, nothing changes, because you don't have 10 years or 15 years to plan. But in order for us to achieve that, we've got to be honest with younger Americans and say, look, these programs are going to exist. They're going to work just a little differently than they did for our parents. And you've got 30 years to get ready for it. And these changes are not unreasonable. Is it unreasonable to ask me to retire at 68 instead of at 67? I probably want to work till I'm well past 68. I mean, 68 is the new 48. So my point is that's not too much to ask of my generation after everything my parents did for me and did for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave those programs the way they are, and we can because we're going to act on it. The second thing we're going to do is probably the most important thing for you, and that is everything we can to ensure that your children and your grandchildren inherit in America every bit as good, if not better, than the America that you grew up in and was left to you. A country that remains the strongest power on earth, not because we want to tell people what to do, but because when we're not strong, it leaves behind a vacuum, and that vacuum leads to violence and chaos. In America, where the economy is vibrant, where when people graduate from college, they can actually find a job, buy their own home, and start a family. Instead of in America, the people graduate from college, they can't find a job, they have to move back in with their parents, and they make 30 grand a year, which is what they could have made without the degree and without the loan. So we're going to rebuild our economy by putting in place policies that allow America to succeed. And here's the third thing we're going to do. We are going to make Americans once again have an incredible amount of pride about what America is. America is the single greatest nation in the history of the world. There is nothing like this in the history of all mankind. And you know why I feel that so passionately in my heart? Do you know why I feel such urgency when I say that? Because I was raised by people that weren't from here. They know what the rest of the world looks like. I was raised surrounded by people that know what the rest of the world looks like. And they are usually the first to tell you, this is an incredible place. I cannot believe that we live in a country where anyone can achieve anything. The other night I was in Las Vegas at that debate at the Venetian. And it reminded me, I lived in Vegas for 6 years growing up. My mother and dad worked at hotels in Las Vegas. My dad was a bartender. My mom was a maid that cleaned the floors. You know what struck me as I was standing on that stage? What a country. That the son of a bartender and a maid is standing up here next to the son of a millionaire and the son of a president. What other country in the world is that possible? That is the country I will fight every single day so that your children and your grandchildren inherit. Because I know that's what you care about the most.
Yeah, one more question. I'll save the toughest one for last. South Carolina or Clemson? Trust me, do not answer that question. Trust me, do not answer that question.
Go Citadel, right? Actually, go Gators. I know it's going to, whatever, guys, whatever. What do you want? Hey, Frank Martin's a good friend of mine, right? Isn't he? He's doing great in basketball. So, Muschamp coached at Florida. Good guy. He'll help you.
They're 10-0, but that 10th win was against Clemson, so we're going to scoop all them.
Yeah.
Last question. Senator, we have won 1 out of the last 6 popular votes for president. Thank the Lord for the Electoral College. That's how George Bush won. How will you win in Colorado and Iowa and Ohio and Virginia and Florida and other states that we have to win if we're going to reclaim the White House?
Well, let me tell you how we don't win. We don't win by becoming more like the Democrats. And the reason is there's already a Democrat Party. Why would you want to have 2 Democrat parties? If Americans want to vote for a Democrat, they'll vote for a real one. And let me stop for a moment and say that, you know, these elections get testy and the elbows fly a little bit, and there's policy differences. We should discuss policy differences. That's important. But I still think we have such a better field than they do. For example, there's no socialist running in the Democratic or Republican primary. We're not hacking into each other's computers to steal our secrets the way they are in the Democratic primary. I don't know if you followed up on that. Apparently someone that works for Bernie Sanders hacked into Hillary's computer. Could have just called the Chinese or the Russians. They would have given it to him. And we don't have anyone running for president that's under FBI investigation on the Republican side. So these are all good signs. But you don't run by changing your principles. You win by applying your principles to the challenges that real people have in their lives. So what do we need to do? Number one, we have to unify as a party. We can't win if we don't have all of our people together. We can't afford to lose anyone we already have. We're going to have a primary. It'll get testy sometimes because we have some differences among us on some issues. We agree on 90% of the issues. There's some with some differences. Let's have a debate on those, especially national security, which is the most important thing the federal government does. But then we have to come together because we can't win without a united party. But we can't win just with a united party. We've got to recruit and create new conservatives and new Republicans. And the way you do that is by talking about them. They haven't heard from us in a long time. Single mothers in America that are struggling to raise their children on their own, making $12 an hour because the father of those children has abandoned them. They haven't heard from us in a long time. And the answer is not another government program. The answer is a vibrant economy that creates a job that pays $60,000 a year instead of $12 an hour, and an ability to acquire the skills they need for that better paying job faster and cheaper than they're able to acquire those skills now. Young Americans who are in college or about to graduate and owe thousands of dollars in student loans, they haven't heard from us in a long time. And the answer is not to make college free, because nothing is free. The answer is to create alternatives to student loans and to put in place policies that allow us to have an economy so you can find a job that pays you enough, not just to pay back that loan, but own a home and start a family and start a business and move ahead. There are millions of Americans in this country that live paycheck to paycheck. And the Democrats have convinced them Republicans don't care about people like you. They only care about the people that have made it. We celebrate the people that have made it. But what makes America special is not that we have rich people. Every country has rich people. We should celebrate the fact that we have people that have been financially successful. But what makes us special are millions of people that are never rich, but are happy. The American dream isn't about how much money you make. The American dream is not about how many things you get to own. The American dream is about achieving happiness. And you know what happiness is for millions of Americans? Having a job that they like and that pays them enough to enjoy season tickets to South Carolina 6 games a year, or Clemson, or the Citadel. Allows them to own a home in a safe and a stable neighborhood. Allows them to raise a family with the freedom to instill in them the values they hold dear. To be able to one day retire with some dignity and security. And to live out the last days of their lives seeing their children have a life even better than the one they themselves had. This is the real American dream. We need to speak to that. And then we need to apply why our principles are better than the other side's. We've tried big government now for 7.5 years, and it is a disaster. It leaves millions, record numbers of Americans on public assistance. Record numbers of Americans with stagnant and flat wages. For the first time in 35 years, a couple years ago, we had more businesses dying than starting. A national debt that keeps growing with no solution in sight. A military that's smaller, a country that's less safe, and a world that's more violent. We need to speak to these fears, but we also need to offer solutions, and we will. We can attract new people to our cause because what we stand for works. But we need people that do so authentically and passionately and incredibly with a sense of urgency that the time to act is now. I'll close with this. Is this our last question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'll close with this. When I decided to run for the Senate 5 years ago, virtually everyone in Washington came against me. The entire leadership of the Republican Party. In fact, the only person in the Senate who initially supported me was a gentleman by the name of Jim Dominick, who I'm sure you remember affectionately. The only one. 4 years later, I decide I'm going to run for president. I'm going to run for president. Some of the same people came to me and said, you can't run. You have to wait your turn. There are other people ahead of you in line. And my argument was, wait for what? For 4 more years of the same thing? For 4 more years in which it doesn't matter if you elect a Republican or a Democrat, nothing changes? What's the point of waiting in line? The time to act is now. What's at stake here is extraordinary. It's not just what party's in charge. It's what kind of country we're going to be. And that's why I'm asking you for your vote. Here in South Carolina, or wherever you might live. I hope you live in South Carolina because you... And I hope that you can go out and encourage more people to be a part of our team. All the people running are good people on our side. Any of them would be better than what we have now. Of course, that's a very low standard, but any of them would be better than what we have now. But I'm the only one running on the promise that what we are facing is much more than just a political choice. It is a definitional, generational choice about our identity. And as tough as things are, I hope you believe as I do that we have a chance to be the authors of the greatest chapter in the amazing story of America, but the time to act is now. And I hope I can earn your support and, God willing, be the next president of the United States. Thank you for having me.